Hey guys, Plonkerboy900 here and welcome back to a brand new challenge video. Today something a little bit different. Normally I don't do solo runs, but I was challenged by a fellow YouTuber to beat Pokemon Fire Red with just one type of move. The YouTuber in question is none other than Christian Pokemon Champion. Say hello.
Hey everybody, this is Christian Pokemon Champion here. I want to thank Plonkerboy900 for joining me on this new series.
We're both going to be running through the whole game using only one type of move. The type that I chose was Ice type. And that was definitely not just so I had an excuse to use a Delibird. CPC, what type will you be using?
If you want to check out my side of the challenge, I'll be using only dragon moves to see if I can win.
This should be a pretty interesting challenge. I'm going to be running through the entire game with just a Delibird that knows nothing but Ice type attacks. This means that some fights are going to be incredibly easy, but other fights are going to be incredibly difficult. I'm looking at you, Blaine. This is going to be a test to see which type can run through the game the easiest. While Ice type isn't as good defensively as Dragon type, offensively it is definitely better. So it'll be really interesting to see what type comes out on top. Any last words, CPC?
Please make sure you like the video and subscribe to this fantastic penguin. He deserves it and he's honestly a really cool guy. And with that I say, get out of here, Blonker!
Alright, with all that out of the way, let's do this. I start the game and pick the male character and I just call ourselves Plonk. No anime reference today, this is serious business. Of course, I name our rival CPC, and the run begins. Here's a look at our Delibird, aptly named Best Burb. It's an impish nature, which isn't that bad I suppose, and it has the ability Vital Spirit, which could actually come in useful. Its stats are nothing amazing, and our only attacking move for a while is Icy Wind. It's not an amazing move, but it's all we're going to have for quite a while. I let CPC choose Charmander so it's the most difficult for us to fight, and despite Icy Wind not being very effective, we actually managed to win. Hopefully the rest of the run is this easy. We beat our rival once again just west of Viridian City, and this time it was even easier as we have a level advantage, and his Charmander doesn't know Ember yet, which I'm very thankful for. Now we arrive in Pewter City where we take on Brock, but I'll give you one guess as to how this fight went. Yeah. Geodude goes down to one Icy Wind, and next up is Onyx, but yeah, he goes down to one Icy Wind as well. That was the most anticlimactic battle I think I've ever done. We beat Brock and make our way through Mount Moon, where I pick the Helix fossil. I swear, do not ask which fossil I took in the comments.
Okay, I'm lying, please do.
We arrive in Cerulean City where we take on our rival once again, but this time things weren't quite so easy. Pidgeot is no problem because he's weak to ice, but his Charmander has Ember now. This is a problem as we easily get two-shot, and our Icy Winds really aren't doing that much. I am really going to need to do some grinding. I keep trying and eventually at level 27 we just survive 2 Embers, and we can just about take it out in time with a few Icy Winds. The rest of his team really isn't a problem though. Abra can't even attack, but it goes down in one shot anyway, and we're able to outspeed Rattata and take it out with just one Icy Wind as well. We beat CPC once again, but it wasn't so easy this time. Next up is second gym leader Misty, who was actually kinda difficult. She has water type Pokemon which resist ice, so our moves really aren't doing that much. Staryu's out first and actually isn't too much of a problem, as it's a 2-hit KO from Icy Wind and she just wastes her only turn going for Harden, so it goes down with no problems, but next up is Starmie. This thing is not quite so easy. Icy Wind is hardly doing any damage whatsoever, and her water pulses are doing a lot more. I managed to bring it down to about half before we get confused by a water pulse, but we are able to hit one more, bringing it down to red health, but she takes us out with one more water pulse, so I'm gonna need a couple more levels. I try again at level 33 where we do actually end up getting the victory, but only because we get a critical hit Icy Wind. I'm not sure if we would have been able to survive one more water pulse there. Starmie goes down and we win the second badge. There's another rival fight with CPC on the SS Anne, but we're able to win on our first attempt thanks to the massive level difference between us. Obviously his Charmeleon was the most difficult thing to deal with, but we take care of it and win the fight no problem. Next up is Lieutenant Serge, and this was another easy fight. Voltorb goes down to a single Icy Wind, as does Pikachu, and it's already down to his final Pokemon Raichu. Icy Wind does over half, as he paralyzes us with a Thunder Wave, which isn't ideal. He then starts going for Double Team, which is even less ideal, and we do end up missing our next move. We do get hit by a super effective Shockwave the next turn, but we survive. We don't miss our Icy Wind, and it's enough to finish off the Raichu, winning us badge number 3. We arrive in Celadon City where we face off against the 4th gym leader Erica, but her grass types are no problem for us. Victory Bell goes down to 1 Icy Wind, and so does Tangela, so it's already down to her final Pokemon Vileplume. I go for another Icy Wind, obviously, but she actually survives. She goes for a Stun Spore and heals up with a Hyper Potion, but a couple more Icy Winds are enough to take it out no problem, and we win the 4th badge just like that. This run has been pretty straightforward so far. We take on Giovanni in the Team Rocket hideout, but he has 2 Rock and Ground types. Onyx goes down in 1 Icy Wind, so does Rhyhorn, so it's now down to his Kangaskhan. He survives 1 Icy Wind and hits back with a Mega Punch, but it doesn't do that much damage, and 1 more Icy Wind is enough to take it out. Delibird, you really are the best burb. Before moving on, I decide it's time to get ourselves a new move. I buy 4,000 coins, which is just enough to buy us the TM for Ice Beam. This move is an incredible upgrade from Icy Wind. It's nearly twice the power, 100% accurate, and has the chance to freeze. This is pretty much the only move I'm going to be needing for the rest of the run. We take on our rival in the Pokemon Tower, but our levels are more than double his, so needless to say, with our new Ice Beam, we completely sweep. So let's move on to the 5th gym leader, Koga. This was another relatively easy fight. First up is one of his 2 Coughings, which goes down to a single Ice Beam, and next up is Muck, who survives 1 Ice Beam but just goes for Acid Armor. That boosts physical defense and Ice Beam is a special move, so 1 more Ice Beam is enough to take it out no problem. His second Coughing is an easy one-shot with Ice Beam, and now it's down to his final Pokemon, Weezing. He survives 1 Ice Beam, but his Sludge really doesn't do that much damage at all. He doesn't heal up or anything, and 1 more Ice Beam is enough to KO, winning us badge number 5. I'm not gonna lie, this is a lot easier than I expected. Or so I thought. Next up is the rival fight in the Silphco building, but this fight actually ended up being quite difficult. First up is Pidgeot, who's no problem because he's weak to Ice Beam, so obviously goes down in 1 hit. But next up is Charizard. This thing is terrifying. Thankfully I outspeed and go for the Ice Beam, but it's not enough to KO. He retaliates with a super effective Flamethrower, which takes us out from full health. I'm either going to need insane luck or a new strategy. I decide to go with the latter. I make my way to Cinnabar Island and get the Blizzard TM in the Pokemon Mansion, and teach it to Delibird. It's a fair amount more powerful than Ice Beam, but it does have low accuracy, so I'll only be using it when I really need the extra power. I face off against CPC once again now that we have Blizzard, so I'm hoping we'll be able to win this time. Once again, Pidgeot goes down in 1 hit, and next up is the terrifying Charizard.
I don't know that, but I do have a skill you might like. It's called Scary Monster. Wanna try it?
No! I go for our new Blizzard, hoping it'll be enough to KO. Unfortunately, he survives, but then we get the freeze, which is exactly what I needed. He stays frozen solid for the turn, so I can just finish it off with an Ice Beam from there. That was insanely lucky, I'm not gonna lie. The rest of his team, by comparison, was a complete joke. Execute goes down in 1 Ice Beam no problem, and next up is Alakazam, who does survive an Ice Beam just about, but he just decides to go for Reflect. 1 more Ice Beam is enough to take it out, and it's already down to his final Pokemon, Gyarados. So I just go for another Ice Beam, which he does survive, but he goes for Bite, which hardly does any damage, so 1 more Ice Beam is enough to KO, and we finally win. I can see Charizard becoming a little bit of a pain for the rest of this run. Compared to the fight that we've just gone through, Giovanni was a complete joke. First up is Nidorino, who gets one-shot by Ice Beam, and next is Rhyhorn, who also gets one-shot by Ice Beam, and next up is Kangaskhan, who doesn't get one-shot by Ice Beam, but his Mega Punch really doesn't do that much, so a second one is enough to knock it out. Don't you just love this exciting content? Last up is Nidoqueen, who is weak to Ice, so yeah. One hit KO'd. We beat Giovanni, what a surprise! Sabrina wasn't too much of a problem either. First up is Kadabra, who gets one-shot by Ice Beam, and next up is Mr. Mime, who does actually have some decent special defense, so he just hangs on, but just goes for Barrier. Once again, I'm not using physical moves. She fully heals with a Hyper Potion, but 1 more Ice Beam is enough to take it out from full health. Venomoth goes down to 1 Ice Beam as well, so it's already down to her final Pokemon, Alakazam. I spice things up a bit and go for Ice Beam this turn, which she survives, but she gets frozen. She doesn't thaw out, but she does go for a Hyper Potion, but a second Ice Beam brings it back down to red health, and 1 more finishes it off, winning us badge number 6. This is where we hit a massive wall though. Next up is the 7th gym, which is the Fire Gym, and let me tell you, this was the Bane of my existence. I'm so lonely. Growlithe is up first and I go for Ice Beam, which he just survives, and hits back with a Fire Blast, which does huge damage. We are able to survive though, and I know he's going to heal up with a Hyper Potion, so I go for Blizzard this turn. He fully heals, but Blizzard is enough to KO from full health, so next up is Ponyta. I go for another Blizzard, which almost takes it out, but he lands a second Fire Blast, which we have no chance of surviving, so I'm going to need to train up a few levels. I try again at level 67, and this time we're able to one-shot his first two Pokemon with Blizzard, but next up is Rapidash, who is a lot more bulky, so he's able to survive a Blizzard with health to spare, and go for a Fire Blast, which deals huge damage, but we do actually survive. One more Blizzard is enough to knock out the Rapidash, and now we're down to his final Pokemon, Arcanine. I'm surprised we've made it this far. Thankfully I outspeed and hit a Blizzard, but as you can see it doesn't even do half. He hits back with the takedown, which is obviously enough to take us out, so I'm going to need even more training. I train up all the way to level 69.
It's funny because it's the weird number. LOL, Lemao.
And try again. This time I'm able to make it to the Arcanine without even taking damage. I go for Blizzard, but it still does less than half, and he hits a Fire Blast for a one-hit KO. Am I really going to need to train even more? I try again at level 71. And this time Blizzard is doing about 50%. Not only that, he actually misses the Fire Blast, which means we can just land one more Blizzard for the KO. We have finally beaten Blaine. This took a lot longer than I would have liked. With that, I just take on the final gym leader, Giovanni, who was a lot easier. Look, I don't even need to narrate this battle. You already know how it goes. I mean, you're looking at the screen, right? If not, then look at the screen. What you're looking at now is his entire team being swept by Ice Beam. Let this be a demonstration to everyone of the immense power of Delibird. Oh look, we've beaten Giovanni, what a surprise. With my confidence at an all-time high, I take on CPC once again. This fight starts the same way that it always does, with Pidgeot being one-shot by Ice Beam. Next up is Rhyhorn, who also goes down to one Ice Beam, but next up is this Charizard. I go for Blizzard hoping it'll be enough, but we miss.
I'm in danger!
He hits back with a flamethrower, which despite us being over 20 levels higher, is enough to take us out from full health. That's not good. I try again, and this time I don't miss the Blizzard, but much to my surprise he actually survives. He hits another flamethrower, which is enough to take us out from full health. I'm gonna need to do some more training, aren't I? I search around in the Seafoam Islands until I find a Dugong with a Never Melt Ice item, which is a held item that boosts the power of Ice-type moves, which is exactly what I'm going to need. I don't really understand how this works. I try again, and despite being 3 levels higher than last time and having the Never Melt Ice, Blizzard basically does the same amount of damage. Not only that, we still can't survive a flamethrower. I try again until we finally get this run. I go for Blizzard, which doesn't KO, but we get the freeze. He doesn't heal or anything, so we take it out with one more Ice Beam, and once again the rest of his team is a joke. Execute goes down in one Ice Beam, so does Alakazam, and while Gyarados does survive an Ice Beam, he misses the Hydro Pump, so we just go for one more and KO. This fight is incredibly easy once the Charizard's out the way, it's just a shame that Charizard's so difficult to beat. We make our way through Victory Road, where I find the TM for Hail. It is an Ice-type move, so I decide to teach it. I don't think it'll be particularly useful, but at least I have 4 moves now. We arrive at the Pokemon League, where I decide to take on Lorelei. I had no idea just how difficult this fight was going to be. Let me explain just why this was so difficult. Her first Pokemon is a Dugong. Now, Dugong is Ice and Water type. Both Ice and Water are resistant to Ice moves, so he's already 4 times resistant. Not only that though, she has the Thick Fat ability, which grants an extra resistance to Ice moves. This means that our moves are doing 6 times less than normal. 6. As you can see, we go for Blizzard, which is the most powerful Ice move in this game, and despite being 18 levels higher, it hardly does anything. I mean, come on, look at that. It goes without saying that this fight is just impossible. This is her first Pokemon. All of her Pokemon are resistant to Ice, and I can barely even land a scratch on this one. You need to remember as well that she has full restores. It's literally impossible for me to win this fight. Even at level 100 this won't be possible. I was going to need a new strategy if I wanted to win this fight, and there was only really one or two things I could think of. The first of which was to use Struggle, which I know technically isn't an ice type move, but even then by the time I beat Dugong we go down ourselves from the recoil, so that's that strategy out the way. I only had one more option, and don't worry, I did brief CPC on this and he said it was absolutely fine, but I'm gonna break my own rules somewhat. Using PK Hex I cloned my Delibird, so now I have 6 of them. They're all level 100 and they're exactly the same in every way. Same moves, same stats, same held item, same everything. If there was ever a chance that I could beat this Dugong, it was gonna be now. With our team of 6 Delibirds, I try again. First up is that dreaded Dugong once again. Our first Delibird manages to make him use a full restore, but goes down shortly after. Delibird number 2 manages to bring it down to red health, and Delibird 3 can finally come out and finish the job. This is progress. Next up is Cloister, who's 4 times weak to ice as well, but takes about 50% from one ice beam. She just goes for spikes, which is completely useless, and one more ice beam is enough to KO. Slowbro goes down in 2 ice beams as well, and next up is Laparis. Again, this is 4 times resistant to ice, and as you can see it's really not doing much damage at all. I get it down to just below half before we go down, and now Delibird number 4 comes out, and brings it down to below half before he gets taken out by a crit. Delibirds 4 and 5 managed to bring it down to under half, so now we're down to our final Delibird. It's able to bring Lapras all the way down to a sliver, but she goes for a full restore. Thankfully our final Delibird is able to knock out the Lapras though, but we are in bad shape and she's still got one more Pokemon. That being Jinx, but thankfully Ice Beam is doing over half. She does hit back with an Ice Punch, but we survive with 4 HP remaining, which means we can just go for one more Ice Beam for the KO. I am so glad that fight is over, you have no idea. It's worth noting that for the rest of this run I'll only be using one Delibird. Next up is Bruno, who was basically a complete sweep. Onyx goes down to an Icy Wind, Hitmonchan goes down to an Ice Beam, Machamp goes down to a single Blizzard, the second Onyx goes down to an Icy Wind, and Hitmonlee goes down to a single Ice Beam. Why couldn't Lorelei have been that easy? Next up is Agatha. Her first Gengar goes down in a couple of Icy Winds, no problem. And next up is
I'm not sure.
Why do you keep doing this? Next up is Arbok, but she goes down to a single Blizzard. Golbat is weak to Icy Wind, so it obviously goes down in one hit. And next up is their second Gengar. I go for Blizzard this time, which is enough to KO from full health, so it's down to our final Pokemon Haunter. It's less bulky than the Gengar, so I just go for Ice Beam, and it's enough to KO from full health. Haunter goes down, and we've already beaten 3 of the Elite 4. Next up is Lance, and this was...
This is a reminder. Take my diarrhea medication.
Oh no. No, Alexa, stop. Next up is Lance, but you already know how this fight goes. What type of dragon type's weak to? Oh yeah, Ice. This is another instance where I'm not even going to narrate this battle. I think we just need to take a step back and witness a Dragon Master being absolutely destroyed by one little Santa bird. There's something quite poetic about it really, isn't there? Beautiful. It really is beautiful. We defeat Lance, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, and move on to the final battle of this run, our rival CPC. Once again, this fight starts the exact same way as always. Pidgeot comes out first and gets instantly deleted by a single Ice Beam. Next up is Rhydon, who also goes down to one Ice Beam, but now it's time for that Charizard. Let's just get this over and done with. I go for Blizzard, hoping it'll be enough to KO, but he just hangs on and hits back with a Fire Blast, which takes us out from full health. Who could have seen that one coming? I try again and go for Blizzard this time as it's got more power, but he hangs on with a sliver of health. But then we get the freeze again, just at the moment we needed it. He heals up with a Citrus Berry and then goes for a full restore, but that's fine. We're faster and Ice Beam is a comfortable 2-hit KO, so it goes down and we've not even taken damage yet. As always, the rest of this fight was a complete sweep. Alakazam gets one shot by Ice Beam, as does Exeggutor, and last up is that Gyarados who actually survives a Blizzard, much to my surprise. I'm not really worried though, as he just decides to go for Dragon Rage, which always does 40 HP, and even with him fully healing, 2 Ice Beams are enough to KO and Gyarados goes down. We beat CPC and beat Pokemon Fire Red using only Ice type moves. This run was actually really enjoyable. I really did have a good time. This run had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. It really had everything. Now, would this run have been easier if I had picked a different Pokemon other than Delibird? Of course. But if I was going to be using Ice-type moves, you know it had to be Delibird. There was no other option. It's amazing just how many of the fights in this game can be completely swept by Ice-type moves. Brock, Erica, Giovanni for example are just complete pushovers, and the only gyms that ever caused me any problems were Misty and Blaine. Obviously our rival's Charizard was a little bit of a pain to deal with, but even then it just required some luck. The biggest challenge of this entire run though obviously was Lorelei. Her Dugong was insane. The fact that it took 6 level 100 Delibird just to beat her first Pokemon really is an example of how difficult that fight was. Once we got past her though, the rest of the run was pretty much plain sailing. Once again Charizard could be a bit of a problem, but it only took me 2 attempts to win. Overall, the Ice-type did pretty well. I wonder how CPC got on with his Dragon types.
I would say that my challenge turned out to be okay. Pretty much just the champion was tough. Lorelei, similar to you, was annoying, but not enough for me to say that she was horrible. Before I get yeeted off the screen, I wanted to say thank you, Plonker, for joining me in this new series. If you're new to Plonker or have been watching him for a while and still aren't subbed to him, please do so. He's a stinking awesome guy.
Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider leaving a like and comment down below with what challenge I should take on next. If I pick your idea, you'll get a shout out in the next video. As always, please follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff, and join the Discord, the link is in the description below. If for whatever reason you're not subscribed to CPC, then make sure you do that now, as he really deserves it. That's all from me, so thank you all so much for watching. Until next time.